I am so delighted to be here. I was here last year, and this is the best conference that I attend every year. So I have a little secret to tell you. You were actually supposed to be addressed by a 3-star general who was held on the East Coast by snowpocalypse. And I was asked this morning if I would step in. So I'm going to tell you what I did as soon as I was asked to speak tonight. I did what most women do, drank 3 cups of coffee and ate 2 chocolate bars. So I want to, you heard a little bit about my background, but I want to share a few other tidbits from my somewhat checkered past. My father, thank you. My father was an Army, was a veteran. He met my mother when he was stationed in Japan during the Korean War. He served in both Korea and Japan. Met my mother. They were married within a month. Didn't speak each other's language, you know, they fell in lust right away. They married within a month, and I was born 9 months later in an Army hospital in Osaka, Japan. My father came back to the U.S. with us when I was 3 months old. He knocked around in a few jobs and really discovered that he loved the military. And by the time I was 4 years old, he joined the Ohio Air National Guard 160th Air Refueling Group, and he spent the rest of his life there as a full-time Ohio Air National Guardsman. So I am one of you. You are my family. So let me tell you what it was like to grow up in southwestern Ohio as a half-Japanese child at a time when we were always at war with some Asian country. Thurgood Marshall once said that he never had to hold his hand up in front of his face to know that he was black. I never had to look in a mirror to know that I was different. My mother used to want us to assimilate, so she would say things like, "The nail that sticks its head up gets hammered down," a great old Japanese saying. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's bullshit. So I knew I was different. I was lucky to have some teachers in school who told me that I wasn't just different, I was special. So I studied theater in college, and now you're about to hear my strange and bizarre career trajectory. I studied theater in college, but soon learned that my great love was actually directing shows. So I ran a small community theater for many years. Then I went to work for the largest community theater in the U.S., and I was their musical theater director. I directed all the musical theater plays. And at the same time, I sang in a rock band. So you have to picture me. This is like early 1980s, and I'm 99 pounds soaking wet, 4-inch heels, 4-inch hair, great big shoulder pads. You know, it was a pretty ugly sight. So I moved to New York in 1984 with my guitar player, who is now my husband. And after a couple of jobs, I landed at NRDC. That's the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is a very famous environmental organization. And I worked with a bunch of scientists and a bunch of lawyers. And I have to say, working with the lawyers, I thought, well, hell, I could do that. So I went to law school at night, starting at age 36, and I took the bar the day after I turned 40. So then I went to work in a big law firm in New York City. I was more mature than my counterparts, and so people thought I knew more. And I got to do a lot of big deals and big transactions while I was there. When I was an 8th-year associate and thought I was about to become a partner, Prue came calling, and that was 17 years ago. I started as a staff attorney Worked for 5 years as a staff attorney, and then I became the chief legal officer of their commercial real estate business. And then I became the chief legal officer of all of PGIM, which is the asset management businesses of Prudential. We are the 9th largest asset management company in the world. I keep losing this thing off my ear. 9th largest asset management company in the world with $1 trillion in assets under management. And so I was going to retire 2 years ago because I'm old. But my chief executive officer asked me to stay on and become the chief diversity officer. And, you know, who can turn down a gig like this in the last part of your career? So here I am. When you're talking about boots to boardroom, it's really not much of a stretch when you look at the kind of career trajectory that I've had. And so I wanted you to hear the kind of weird sort of career path that I've had so that, I got to put this back on. I wanted you to hear the kind of weird trajectory that I had so that you could understand the meat of my discussion that I'm about to get into. I learned when I was in my 30s to understand my brand. I had a boss that I worked for at NRDC who told me that I could move more things forward than anybody that she had ever seen. And I picked that apart and discovered that what that really meant was I could get shit done. And I learned then that I could map what it was that I could do. And I want to, because I'm already running out of time, and I want to give you this map. This is my gift to you. You start off by figuring out what your brand is. My brand is I get shit done. The competencies that underlie my brand are things like triage. I'm great at triage. I can tell you what I need to address today, what I can put off to tomorrow, and what if I leave alone will probably go away by itself. I'm also really good at identifying talent, people around me who can help me get the things that I need accomplished. And thirdly, I'm really good at delegating to those people while I keep responsibility, accountability for my vision in the end. And that's essentially what your brand is. If you want to be able to market yourself, what you do is you identify your brand, you identify those competencies, then you look back at your own experience, at your own history, and you figure out what there is in your history that proves your theory about yourself. And so, for example, I directed plays. I might have 150 people working with me on a musical, you know, orchestra, lighting people, lighting designers, costume people, actors, dancers, musicians. And the thing about it is, you know, I don't have subject matter expertise in most of those areas. But if you put the right people around you, you know, you can get anything done. But I had accountability because I was working under deadlines. Same thing happened when I became a lawyer and I was having to do major transactions, you know, initial public offerings, high yield bond offerings. You put the right people around you, you keep responsibility, you figure out what it is that you can do today or you have to do today and that you can put off till tomorrow. I was able to take my map, my brand, my competencies, and the work that I had done underneath that to prove that I had that brand and that skill set. I was able to take that and move from job to job to job because it wasn't really about my experience, it was more about my competencies. That's what you all need to think about. You all are coming out of the military. You have a wonderful set of competencies. Understand what your brand is. Figure out what your brand is, figure out the competencies that support your brand, and then look at what you've done in the military and in your previous life, and figure out how to market yourself based on your own map of your brand. So that's my recommendation to you. One last final piece of advice that I want to give all of you, and that is watch for brand derailers. You know, in this age of social media, Um, you're only one tweet away. I mean, come on. How many of us are making judgments about people who are making tweets every day? Right? Remember, you're only one tweet away from being seen as a giant jackass. So I will warn you that make sure that your Facebook page, that it looks like the brand you want the world to see, keeping in mind that every potential employer is going to look at your Facebook page. Make sure that it represents you. Make sure you don't tweet something or put something out into the ether that you can never take back that is going to say something about you that you don't want said. So that's it. I've lectured you enough. I'm going to bring on some really incredible people, and we're going to have a great conversation. And I want you all to have a great time. I love you all. Thank you for listening to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Boots to the Boardroom panelist, retired Rear Admiral C.J. Janes, Executive Technical Advisor for Raytheon, Lindy Napier, Associate Manager, Accenture, Nikki Pollock, Director of Talent Acquisition from Quicken Loans, from Tech Systems, Executive Director Michelle Webb, and Kathy Verhoff has agreed to moderate this panel.
I was actually supposed to be one of the people on the panel. So,
how'd that work out for you?
I have to say, this is a really impressive group of people, you know. And so I'm going to start with Rear Admiral CJ.
Thanks, Kathy.
And we've got a few questions that we're going to pose to everybody. But first, I want each of them to give you a couple of minutes on their backgrounds and what they're doing today. CJ?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is C.J. Janes. I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania. I started my career as a math teacher, spent about 4 years as a math teacher, and decided I needed to see the world. So I joined the Navy, and I promised my mother it would be 4 years. And 33 years later, I decided to retire. Following my 33-year career, I decided to chase a childhood dream, and I went to work at a horse farm. And about a year after that, I decided I needed some money to feed the horses. And so Raytheon came calling, and I am currently the Executive Technical Advisor for Information, Intelligence, and Services at Raytheon.
My name is Lindy Napier. I am originally from Kingman, Kansas, a very, very small town in Kansas. From Kansas, I went to the Naval Academy and graduated in 2008. And then I was commissioned as a surface warfare officer, and I spent 6 years as a surface warfare officer on board ships. First ship was out of Sasebo, Japan, a marine carrying ship. Any Marines out there? And then I moved to Norfolk, Virginia, and I was on an aircraft carrier, driving the ship and also assistant weapons officer on there. And then I went as Admiral Staff on 2nd Fleet in Virginia. When I was in Japan, I actually met my husband, and after the time in the Admiral Staff, I was like, all right, it's time to kind of get out, get married, start a family, and let's start my career and see where things are going. So I immediately jumped on an opportunity, the first opportunity, which was a cold calling for a military recruitment firm. Shortly after, I decided that really wasn't for me. So I kind of threw the towel in for that, and I started to utilize my network and kind of look at the bigger companies that everyone totes, we want to hire military veterans, we want to hire military spouses, and so I really kind of looked them up. And at that point, I found Accenture. Got hired with Accenture in 2015, and have been with them since. I started out of DC, and I spent a couple years there as a traveling consultant, and then I moved to San Antonio. My husband is in the Navy, And we moved to San Antonio. He's stationed here, and my company thankfully has an office here. So I stayed with the company, and I'm working now here locally. We just had our first child. He's 5 months old, so we're trying to work that in too. Yep, and that's me.
Nikki.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nikki Pollock. I work at Quicken Loans as a director with that crazy commercial push button get mortgaged. It's so great to be here. So first of all, it's amazing to be sitting on this panel with all these impressive women. I actually started my career in the Army as an 88 kilo. That's a watercraft operator. You know what that is? Because the Army has more boats and the Navy has more airplanes, right? It all makes sense. That's how we roll. I spent about 2.5 years in Central and South America, assisting with humanitarian relief efforts, taking speedboats to Colombia to prevent drug trafficking. I took school buses to Honduras for underprivileged kids. Hands down, one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my entire life. The reason that I joined the Army is the same reason that I got out of the Army to go to college, and the same reason that I work at Quicken Loans. I thrive off change. And I wanted the opportunity to make a difference. And I had that opportunity by going to college and working for the organization that I currently do. One of the things that I talk to my team members a ton about is that opportunity. Those things that give you the butterflies in the pit of your stomach, those things that make you nervous, right? That, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. Will I be able to handle that? It's those opportunities as veterans, as student veterans, that you guys will need to seize in the future in order to take your career to that next level. I started from the bottom as well. For the Army, I started as a private. For Quicken Loans, I started as an intern in our veteran tour of duty program, which was incredible. We had benefits the first day, which is something that not a lot of companies do. And from there, I was able to transition over through several promotions and get to see kind of the way that the organization works. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Webb. I'm with Tech Systems, and I have been sitting with these 3 and 4. You're really funny, by the way. We were dying back there. Sitting with these women over the last couple hours now, it seems like, and so impressed with the military background. And I've been sitting next to an admiral, which is pretty cool to tweet about. So my connection to the military, and we decided that we weren't going to call it a brat. We were going to call it a very well-behaved child. I was a very well-behaved child of an Air Force officer. My dad was a flight instructor and eventually taught at the Air Force Academy. So I ended up growing up in Colorado Springs, although Texas born. Grew up in Colorado, and trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up was not easy, and I was introduced by a friend to the company Tech Systems, and that was 22 years ago. And I entered the workforce as a recruiter, and then worked my way up to the organization, and now I'm out of our Maryland office. And Tech Systems, what we do is staffing and services. So we have over 30,000 consultants in North America that we hire for even the companies that are sitting up here. So we find jobs for people, and I'm passionate about finding jobs for people. I oversaw recruiting for over a decade for Tech Systems for North America, but I now actually oversee our employee experience. And the employee experience is really everything that somebody experiences coming to work for us, from the moment that you interview or you're in that recruitment stage until you decide to retire and you become alumni, and ensuring that every employee is having the best possible experience working for our organization, and that we provide the best culture that we can thrive and our people can thrive in. So it's a pretty cool job, but I'm excited to be here with you today to talk a little bit about my journey. I'm actually wearing my glass ceiling. This is my broken glass ceiling as I got into the executive ranks. So it's very fitting to be wearing it here with many of you that are gonna break those ceilings too. So thanks for having me.
Okay, so we're going to get into a few questions here and talk to some of these incredible women about things that are important to all of us. So, CJ, let's start with you. And can you talk to us a little bit about ways that you can thrive during a career transition?
I'd love to address that. Regardless of how long you've been in the service, there's going to come a point when it's going to be time for you to leave. And the most important thing you need to do is you need to be ready to close that chapter. And a lot of people struggle with that because that's the only thing they know. And so for me, it was important to take some time and really think about what I wanted to do for the next phase of my life. I mentioned that I went and worked on a horse farm. I was very serious. For a year, I was a farmhand, mucking stalls, fixing fences, working with the veterinarian and the farrier, and actually taking care of 63 acres and 55 horses. And I needed that time to step away from the military and figure out what's next for me. And at that point is when, like I said, Raytheon came along about a year later. But I had to be mentally prepared to do that. And so whether you need to make yourself a checklist or whether you just need to take some time to go through your personal desires, you need to make sure you're ready to step away. Because if you're not, the transition is going to be very difficult.
That's great advice. Nikki, how about you?
Yeah, my biggest thing is just saying yes. Those opportunities will present themselves, and again, those things that you have the fear about. As I mentioned, I started as an intern. It was actually with one of our sister companies at Quicken Loans, One Reverse Mortgage, when my leader approached me and offered me an opportunity to help stand up a couple of teams in the mortgage industry where I had no experience. I said yes. And then from there, it's just getting so good at your job that other people do your PR for you. If you're the go-to, if you're the one that everyone's always asking for on those projects, that's how you get to that next level. From that position, actually, my name got back to our CEO, Jay Farner, and I started to work on his team. And then with that opportunity came the next opportunity and then the next. So it's all about saying yes and seizing those opportunities when they present themselves.
I think that's great advice. One of the things that that I tell people that I work with is that if you're reaching out to take a new job that you're totally qualified for, it's not a growth opportunity, and you shouldn't be doing it. So I think that's obviously been your mantra as you've approached your career.
Absolutely.
Lindy and Michelle, I want to talk to both of you. Linda, let's start with you. You have a 5-month-old. So talk to us about work-life balance.
Well, actually, I'd like to start a little earlier. So, in the military, I wanted to kind of wait to have my family. I wanted to wait. So by the time we were ready, I was a little older, and this is maybe a little too personal, but but we actually couldn't have our own child ourselves. So we ended up going through IVF, and that battle was very difficult. I was at Accenture when doing that, and thank goodness, Accenture's very forward. I had a bunch of women that were my executives and women above me that understood, but also the men that were my managers, et cetera, that understood. And let me take the time off I needed, and let me take the short-term disability unpaid leave so I could get that all taken care of. And then thankfully, it was successful. And then 5 months later, now we have our little boy. And that is another challenge, as I'm sure most of you can attest to. But keeping in mind as you guys are going out into the workforce and supporting people and also going through your own challenges, that it's all doable. There are people that are there to support you. Right now, I would say, and again, another personal situation, right now I would say breastfeeding is the hardest thing to do in the workforce. Trying to go and take 30 minutes away twice a day, so you're gone an hour, and people are like, well, where are you going all the time? Just having to either answer, be very candid, like, well, I gotta go, sorry. Or, just having those people that do support you, that are willing to say, she's fine, just let her go do her thing, is very, very important. So for work-life balance purpose, you guys are all veterans in the military, you understand what it takes to get the job done, the mission done. That carries over as you get into the civilian world, and not everyone can do it. But you are already starting out ahead. And so there's not really anything you can say to say, go do this. You already know what to do. You just kind of push through and you do it and you take care of it. And so just keep doing that.
Michelle, what were some of the personal challenges that you have encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think often when we start talking about work-life balance, we start thinking about families, children, mothers specifically. And the reality is that we all need balance and that we're all better at what we do professionally if we are taking care of ourselves first, whatever that means, whether that's time with family, whether that's your physical fitness, your things that matter to you. So I think that sometimes the balance question gets lost in the motherhood question, which I have 3 children, ages 8, 11, and 13, so clearly busy. And I had about 7 years of my professional career as a dual income household. My husband and I both having careers and managing that, which had its own set of challenges of balance. Then my husband was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which ended up putting him out of work in 2011 with his disability. And so I've been the sole provider for our family, now for 7 years. And it changed a lot of my understanding. Actually, I used to give a lot of my male counterparts specifically because they did have spouses at home that were doing things and taking care of their lives. And, they'd get a to-do list. And I was the to-do list. And I was still working, 50, 60 hours a week. So I used to give them a hard time, and then I realized the pressure that actually came with being the sole provider of a family, and knowing that my family of 5 was dependent on my career and my success in order to make sure that we were thriving. There's going to be challenges and things as you enter the workforce, as you go through the workforce, and for me, a lot of it comes down to decision making and clarity. And most of what I'll talk about today as we talk through this will be around getting clear and how you get clear. So for me, there's something I use constantly. I learned it actually on another executive panel, a woman executive, and I still use it today, and I heard it probably 6 years ago, and it's 10, 10, and 10. If I make this decision, what's going to be the impact in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years? And it just gives me a very quick way to think about the decision I'm making. So sometimes work wins. Sometimes personal life wins. You'd be surprised because you kind of do have to look at the longer term impact of the decisions that you're making. But what I have come to realize is when it comes to decision making around those priorities, I've thrown guilt out of the mix. And when I make the decision, I just make the decision. And I don't spend time dwelling on whether I made the right decision, because then I'm not present for wherever it is that I am at that point. So for me, balance, it definitely is a mental game. And those of you that have been in, the military, you have the mental game. You probably have it more than most people. So I think that it's getting clear about your priorities and then being good with the decisions that you make.
That's great advice. I'm going to stick with you, Michelle, because I want to talk to you about sponsorship and mentorship. There's a lot of discussion about needing sponsors or mentors. And can you talk to us a little bit about the difference between sponsors and mentors and what they each bring to the table?
Absolutely. So especially being a female executive, you definitely get a lot of people. It's kind of like, are you my mother? It's like, will you be my sponsor? And that's awesome because you have this opportunity to impact people. But you want to get specific about who you think can coach you and why. And that's really what a mentor is meant to do. They're meant to guide you. They kind of know all the ins and outs and the challenges that you're facing, and you can get real with that person so they can give you real guidance. So think of a mentor like a coach. A sponsor is someone who's advocating, that's in the room for you. So when decisions are being made, whether it be you're being referred into a company that you're interviewing for, and you know that you need to have someone speak up on your behalf, it's making sure that sponsor knows where you stand, what you're great at, so that they can speak on your behalf at that moment, whether it's for getting in the job or it's getting promoted in the job. Whereas a mentor is really someone who's by your side, coaching you and supporting you and helping you make those decisions so that you can get clear with that sponsor.
So one of the things I've heard discussed is having your own personal board of directors.
I love that idea.
And that is your go-to people. The network, whether you call them your posse. I happen to call them my posse, but some people call them a board of directors. CJ, can you talk to us a little bit about sponsorship and mentorship and who you've had around you?
Yes, I'd love to. So for mentoring, the name Frank Smith is the first name that always comes out of my mouth when anyone asks me who my mentor is. I met Frank my first week in the Navy, and he has been with me ever since. And along the lines, as I've gone through my career, I have picked up other mentors along the way. And I eventually, when I became more senior, started coaching people on how to pick a mentor. And I always tell them, if you're sitting at the table and the person across from you looks like you have the wrong person across the table. Frank is an African-American man, and he has given me the best advice my entire Navy career. And he is the first person that I go to. And so you need to find somebody who doesn't think like you, doesn't look like you, doesn't come from where you came from, because they are going to give you a different perspective on life. And that's really what you need to hear. And as far as sponsorship goes, your sponsor will reach out to you, and it may not be anybody that you anticipated sponsoring you. And so you have to be open-minded, and if somebody reaches out to you and says, what do you think about coming to work for us? Even if that's the furthest thing from your mind, give it a shot, because that person sees something in you that you may not see. And so always be open to mentors and always be open to sponsors, and make sure you understand the difference. Your mentors are your board of directors, but your sponsor is that person that's going to get you in the door.
That's great advice. So my assistant gave me a Wonder Woman bracelet for Christmas. And I meant to wear it today. I forgot to wear it. But we know that, that women who have accomplished all that you have accomplished have superpowers. You didn't know that, men out there, did you? That we have superpowers? So I want to ask a couple of you, what are some of the superpowers that you have? What tips do you have to share with this audience about building confidence? What made you strong in the face of adversity? What unseen barriers have you encountered in the workplace, and how did you overcome them? And so Nikki, let's start with you.
So I think for me, it's prioritization. You're all student veterans, so you have a lot of balls in the air at the same time. So figuring out what needs to be done right now, what can wait till later, and what you can put off, to your point from earlier. So figuring out what strategy works for you, because whatever time you allot for that task, isn't it random that it always takes that amount of time to complete that task? So figuring out like the structure of your day and what it's going to take for you just one day at a time. The other thing I would talk to would be surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. Real talk, just finding those individuals that you're always going to consistently be learning from on a regular basis, where you can engage with them. They have traits that you want to emulate to get you to that next level, because those are the people that are going to make that difference in your life, and all of that will eventually start to rub off on you moving forward in your career as well.
All good advice. And Michelle, how about you?
So I loved what you were saying earlier, your map you gave them. So I'm going to kind of add to that.
Okay.
Because it was really a well sort of laid out thinking about that plan. I think the challenge sometimes, and we hire in our internal workforce, not our contract workforce, but our internal workforce, a lot of college graduates who are just figuring out what they want to be, you know, when they grow up. And usually in our business of technical recruiting, that wasn't like in first grade, someone said, I want to be a technical recruiter. So, you know, you're not, it comes over time. You think, well, maybe I could work at this company and the culture will be right, and I like sales and all that good stuff. But a lot of people don't have clarity on what their brand is. So when you're starting that map with the idea of a brand, I think one of the services you can do yourself is to get clear on what your brand is. And the way to do that, and I'm going to give you a few pieces of a brand so you understand. And what's happened is Kathy has so much experience that she can so clearly articulate her Get Shit Done brand. That's great. And that she knows that's what people see when they see her. But she may not have known that 25 years ago. So it builds. And so you want to start first with figuring out what your strengths are. So I'm going to give you a couple tips to do this. One, I call it text 10. Text 10 people and ask them to give you 3 words that they would describe as your strengths. So you're getting feedback from people that are around you, and do it with people you've worked with, you've gone to school with, that might be in your family, your personal life. It can be a hodgepodge.
Board of directors.
Your board of directors, absolutely. Text them and just say, hey, give me 3 words that come to mind when you think about what I'm really great at. right? Because what you're thinking and what they're thinking, it's really interesting to see if those things match up. There's also tools out there you can use, like strength finders, it costs almost nothing to go on and get some basic information on strengths based on your preferences. Because here's what happens. The things we're strong in are the things we enjoy. You enjoy them. This is an enjoyment theory. You enjoy it, you do it well, you get good feedback on it, you get positive reinforcement, and therefore you want to do it more. So it's really important, I think, as you're figuring out what your next career is to find things that you really enjoy. So to get clarity on what your strengths are will help you know how to lean into those. Instead of going out there and thinking in the interview process or in the beginning of your work, your corporate work lives, whatever those end up being, there's so much time we spend trying to get better at the 10% we're not great at, and we spend all this energy there, versus figuring out what we're really great at and finding ways to lean into it and actually build action plans around how to get better at it. And you're more confident. So you're gonna show up differently when you're interviewing with people, whether it's for the new job or it's the promotion. So get clarity on your strengths. The other is figure out what you value, what's important to you. What types of words would you use to describe your values? Is it faith? Is it family? Is it love? Is it connection? Is it hard work? What are the values that are really important to you? And make sure that you're connecting things to your next life that you're going into with the values that matter to you and with companies that value those things too, or you're gonna have a lot of disconnect. And what's your purpose? Why do you get up every day? And some of that is big picture, like what actually gets me out of bed in the morning? My family, the people I care about, my spirituality, whatever that is for you. And then there's the what do you get lost in? You know how you start doing something and within hours, it feels like you lost your whole day because you were researching something or you were writing something or you were engaging in conversation that was really inspiring to you, whatever that is. What do you get lost in? That's your purpose. That's what drives you every day. So if you think about your strengths, you think about the things that you value, and you think about your purpose, and you kind of put those things together, that's building your brand. That's building who you are and how you show up. And then when you get more mature and wise, you get a tagline like Kathy, which is amazing. And you just make it short and simple. But that hopefully can get you started so that when you're walking into these interviews or this next phase of your life, you're walking in with more confidence and clarity about who you are and what you bring to the table.
That's all great advice. That's really great advice, and it is important. If your supervisors aren't telling you when you're employed, if your supervisors aren't telling you what your strengths are, ask them. And when you're building your brand, you don't focus on what you don't do well. You work on that on the side. When you're building your brand, you really you focus on what you do well. You focus on how to build on that. And if your supervisor isn't telling you, you should be asking them. But I love the idea of texting 10 people and asking them to say the 3 things they think of when.
It's very quick, easy.
So the first time I met Jared, and Jared, you probably remember this, I asked, what is the percentage of student veterans who were non-commissioned officers when they separated from the service? And Jared told me it's 88%, which is astounding. So, and what that tells me is that when we hire veterans who graduate from college, we are getting something we don't get from any other body of students, and that is leadership qualities. And so, CJ, talk to me a little bit about that.
So let's go back to when I was an ensign. I was an aviation maintenance officer, and I had 350 enlisted sailors that were under my charge. Well, who did all the work? Well, it wasn't me, right? It was the enlisted sailors. Who fixed the airplanes? Who took the maintenance teams out there? Who went on the detachments? Who kept the planes flying? It was the enlisted troops. There are leadership qualities within the enlisted ranks that cannot be matched anywhere else. And I think sometimes when you apply for a job, you don't sell yourself as a true leader, but you are. And you need to figure out how to articulate what you did and the teams that you led and the leadership qualities that you developed because of that. And I'm going to speak to just the women veterans out there for just a minute. You have succeeded in an environment that is dominated by men. You go, girl. Right?
You should all have Wonder Woman bracelets.
You need to sell that because you are far more advanced than the average woman coming out of college who has not faced the adversity and the challenges that you have. So harvest that energy and use that to your advantage as you make your way through the workforce.
That's fabulous. Lindy.
So I was a lieutenant when I got out in 2003 in the Navy.
You didn't do any work either.
No.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to say is I missed my NCO. That was tough. I didn't have that person to go to that says like, no, really, you should be doing that. You know, you talk about mentorship, et cetera. Your NCOs were your mentors, right? I missed it a lot. But in my company, we have a federal side of the house. And because of my background, I got very easily into the federal side of the house, which was kind of nice. Because our clients were federal, our clients were government, and I could speak the same language. And there was a little bit more of an overlap for that, thankfully. But the problem even I had, and I think the NCOs have, is being able to translate your experience into corporate language and being able to sell yourself in corporate language. And once you get that, having the confidence, that'll give you the confidence to be able to sell yourself, to know that, you know, and I know we talk a lot about NCOs, but you can be the CEO of a company. You can be an executive. I think 33% for the females, I think 33% in my company is female executives right now, which is awesome. I was in a meeting 2 days ago and all the executives, everyone in there was all females and it was fantastic. So we're making strides towards that. And so you have to have that confidence. You have to be able to sell yourself in order to know that you can, to get that position. So how do you do that? And I think that is going back to your mentors. I think your mentors are huge. I don't think that's something you go to your sponsors for. You go to your mentors, and hopefully they've been in the corporate world a little bit and can help you translate, but also utilizing those recruiters. And there are people out there, I mean, you guys are both recruiters, that I'm sure part of your job is solely looking at a military resume and saying, okay, well, really, this is a team lead. You're not just a cargo master, whatever, you know? So you have to be able to translate it. And then again, the confidence, making sure you're confident when you go in there. I think that's one of the things I struggled with the most, is knowing that I was good enough for a job. And to what you said, Kathy, like you are, like you are good enough for that position. If you're trying to get a job that you're qualified for, you're wrong. Go for a job that you're not qualified for, that you'll be a little uncomfortable doing. You're used to doing that in the military, and you can succeed. And people are doing that and going to pass you if you don't do that.
So I'm going to talk to just the women again. Men, you know, la 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 la. There's a joke that if you post a job, and you recruiters have probably heard, if you post a job that there are 5 criteria required for that job. A man will apply for it if he's got 2, and a woman thinks she needs 6. So, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So, I'm going to leave you with one last thought, and I think, you know, it's the mantra that I live by, and that is that you are only limited. You are only limited by how big you can dream. And so I would encourage you all to dream big. We're going to go right down this table very quickly, and each person is going to talk about something they think you ought to get out of the SVA conference in the next couple of days. And we all have tables, and so each one of us is going to say very quickly what they think you ought to take away from this. CJ?
I think you ought to all go take home 100 business cards. So
Good
walk
advice.
through the booths, come and see us. I'll be standing at the Raytheon booth tonight and for the next 2 days. So come and see us, make connections, get business cards, and then use them in the future.
And to add to that, it's not just getting them, it's following up with someone. Saying something that's memorable, doing something that's memorable. Sell yourself in those conversations, and that might make that relationship where people remember you and you can reach back out to them. But networking, agreed. I never got a job. I have yet to get a job by just applying to a job with a resume. You have to be able to talk to a person and sell yourself for your person.
It's that confidence piece where you come up to both of their points. Just have a conversation. We want to know about you. Every company that's here is invested in the future of our veterans and wants to learn more. So just come prepared. That's all we ask.
I want you all to know that you have help. That, some of this, like figuring out how to get your resume the way it's supposed to look, or figuring out where maybe you best fit. I know my team will be here in force. I am having to leave tomorrow morning, but my team's going to be here in our booth, and it's what we do. We recruit. We help people match jobs. It doesn't cost you all anything. It's there for you to make sure that you can get where you need to go. So you already have enough you're trying to figure out. You don't have to, let us help you figure out. People, that are in recruitment help you figure out how to get those jobs. That's what we're here to do. So, but I also agree that it's, fake it till you make it is a little bit, but fake it till you believe it. Because there's a lot of people that walk in, and it's because of the way they present themselves and talk about it as to why they show up the way they do and why we believe them. And they may not be any more qualified, if not less qualified than you are. So I would just tell you to fake it till you become it, and you'll believe it.
And my final advice is that, it's a game of numbers. The more people you meet, the more resumes you get out there, the more cards you take, the more opportunities. I totally love the idea of get 100 business cards, because that's then you're opening more doors for yourself. So it's really a game of numbers. Get out there, meet people, and create a network out of this, and have a really great time. Please join me in thanking these incredible women for being here today.
And you, Kathy, and you.
Thank you.